What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the DX Gamer Show. My name is Mike, aka Operation DX, and welcome to the second episode of PlanetBase. During the first episode, it was a flurry of activity as we had a lot of resources to work with in order to kind of get things going from our colony ship. However, things are going to start to slow down a little bit in this series because we are reaching that ever so mighty goal of self-sufficiency. Now, fortunately, I left myself with pretty much just, and I mean just, enough resources to achieve that goal. If we happen to have some sort of accident where something happens, if someone dies or a module gets struck, we could get into a little bit of trouble. We're hoping that doesn't happen, although it is completely 100% random, so we'll see how this goes, I guess. But fortunately, we do have our mine up and we do have our processing facility up, so we can make steel. And I couldn't recall the name, but now I know it well. It is bioplastic. So those are the two main resources that we need to get things going. All right, so we need to build a couple more modules, as I was expressing in the previous episode, to become self-sufficient. All right, so we're getting on top of that right at the beginning of this episode, and this is the medical module. For some reason, in the last episode, I kept calling the canteen the cantina. It is a canteen, and the canteen is functioning well so far. We got our biolab up, and it is producing food. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the resources that are just chilling out there after I recycled my colony ship. Okay, it's kind of cool. All right, so it has kind of like a flavor of, I don't know if you guys ever played Startopia before. This game really gives me a Startopia vibe. I don't know why, but it totally does. So as those resources are just kind of chilling out there in the open, they start to degrade, actually. They'll go from excellent condition to good condition, and they get worse and worse and worse. So it is in my best interest at some point in the near future to build some sort of stock facility. All right, so there is a module that you can store these items in. However, we just simply can't afford to be doing that right now, but we'll do it as soon as we possibly can. Let's also talk about the droids, all right, or the bots. I was calling them bots. Droids, same thing. All right, so they have a degradation quality to them. So you can see that my engineering bot here, my yellow bot, has a wrench symbol above his head, or its head, and at some point that bot is going to fail and it will require an engineer to fix it. Alright, so I'm not sure if I should bring this up now, but I guess I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyways. Alright, so there is a module which I consider to be a little more advanced. You usually don't get this module until you've built some additional power facilities and tinkered around with the water a little more and get a bit more balance going on in your colony. However, there is a bot module that allows you to place down this little repair facility inside of it, and the bots will go ahead and just head over there by themselves and repair themselves, and they don't wait until they're like into the red. They actually go over there when they're in fairly good condition and just get repaired. Again, reminds me a lot of like Startopia. Now, in this current situation, when the bot breaks down, the engineer actually waits to the last minute to where the bot is actually broken down and is pretty much non-functional. This can suck because the bot may be doing something important, like it's about to go weld some piece of the base that you just set up, or it's carrying some goods over to the storage, or whatever it's doing. Pretty much someone might collect that box and carry it for the bot to the location or whatever, but yeah. Anyway, there is also a secondary bar on the bot that cannot be repaired. It's a like overall degradation, and once it hits that point, you pretty much lose it. It's actually like losing a crewman, and you don't realize how helpful the bots are until you actually lose them, because they move around pretty fast. All right, so let's start talking about what we have going on here in our colony. So you probably noticed that I built a couple of important things. I'm also placing down a lab, which we'll talk about in just a second, but in the canteen, I put down a food processor, and this is very, very important. This is pretty much where all your colonists go to get food. So my engineer bot just welded that up, and as I was talking about in the previous episode, in the bio lab, we have little symbols above each plant. You can see that they're kind of orange right now, and I had mentioned that they're probably gonna get neglected because everybody was super tired during that first episode towards the end there, so they're all gonna get some sleep. But once my biologists get to work, those plants will go back into good condition. So I don't think they can go into a like fail condition to where you actually lose it if it's not maintained properly. It's just it won't produce food as fast, or it won't produce food at all. Now you can see I have a couple of red indicators above my tomato plants, but I do have a biologist right now working on one of the plants here. So these produce little boxes, red boxes, that have different, foods, various, depending on what plant it is. So tomato plants, or I don't know did I do the radish or did I do the onions? I can't remember. And then we also did a different type of plant, which is a little more starchy. The rice, was it rice? I think, or corn? I can't remember what it was. But there are different types of plants, and actually the ones that are indicated that are the starchy plants also produce a secondary product that gets turned into bioplastic. So that's pretty much how you generate that. So the mine generates the iron, or the iron ore, and the plants actually generate the bioplastic. So that's why I want to have a nice big lab to work with, so I can place down a whole bunch of plants. And of course, we need the medicinal plants as well, because they are used in creating the medical packs. So let's go ahead and talk about the lab, since I just brought that up. So we do have our medic bay, or medic module, set up there. We have a bed that hasn't been built yet, but that is where crewmen go to get healed if they become injured. And there are all kinds of different injuries that can happen, but in the lab, you can produce more med kits. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about injuries a little bit, since I was talking about that. So there is a bunch of different things that can happen, which is extremely cool, in my opinion, in this game. We probably won't see some of the stuff till later on, but it's still really neat. All right, so I was talking in the previous episode how the workers in the mine, every once in a while, they get hurt and they come to the medic lab and they need to get fixed. Oops, accidentally clicked on a button there. So the medic will go grab a med kit and heal them up, kind of thing. And sorry to sidetrack, but you can see how my bot just failed and the engineer finally got around to fixing him up there. He was about to weld the bed there, or he just did weld the bed. Holy cow, that was close. That would really not have been very good at all if it actually hit that module. Yeah, anytime if those strike a module with anybody in them, they all die. Okay, so we don't want that to happen. We do not want that to happen. All right, so injuries. Let me get back to that. All right, so there's a couple of events that can happen on this particular planet. I don't know about the other planets because I haven't played them yet. They may have different environmental disasters, but this particular planet has sandstorms and solar flares. And of course, we have the comets striking down. But when a solar flare occurs, any crewman unfortunately, it usually is the poor workers, get irradiated. And they die pretty quickly if they don't get into the med bay and get healed up. And that's where we want to have more beds in our med bay. They can actually be sitting on the bed and they'll just die. You know, it's sad. It's sad because, yeah, they get irradiated. Now, there is something you can actually do about this later on, and I hate to talk about the later modules, but I guess I'm gonna have to go ahead and do that. So there is a module called the control module, and it has a couple of different functions. It allows you to track and monitor incoming comet strikes, and that's kind of how you can deal with that, because you can actually build a system that will stop them from hitting your colony. Well, at a percentage, not 100%. And then there is a security function tied to that module, and you can actually click on the security icon and set your base to different alert statuses. So you can set it to yellow alert, and pretty much all the crewmen will go back into the station and they'll stay in there until you release the yellow alert. And then there's actually something else that can happen, which, you know what, I'm not going to give away all the chips in this episode, because I can talk about like a lot of the later stuff easy. So we'll talk about some of the other stuff a little bit later on. But let's go ahead and click on a couple of these here to see how they're doing. They're still in excellent condition. Now, something I appreciate in this game is when you do actually build the cargo module, if some of the stuff has degraded to bad quality, if you stick it in the cargo module, it will actually go back up into excellent quality. Yeah, it's not so realistic, but for the game purposes, I like it. I appreciate it. I hope they don't change that, honestly, because it's really helpful. Some of these things are just really critical. You need them. So if they go bad, they don't really disappear on you. Now, in Startopia, thinking kind of back, I think when you leave a module sitting on the floor for too long, it turns into a trash pile. And it's no longer usable. So some things that you forgot to stick in storage, they go to the wayside in that game. That's why it reminds me a lot of that. All right, so we just placed down a medicinal type plant. So what you need to do is you take the medicinal plant, the byproduct of it, and you bring it over to the lab. I think the lab? No. Yeah, the lab. And you need also a piece of bioplastic, and that turns into a med kit. Interestingly, you can also take the bioplastic and turn it into this sort of meat product. And oh gosh, talking about later stuff, but we'll run into it eventually again. So, another thing I find to be really cool in this game that I didn't know existed until I played it for a little while is that your crew actually needs to eat a variety of different foods or they'll get sick. And I think that's really cool. That's a really nice touch to the game, and I didn't even know it was there until later on. So, you know, if they're just eating tomatoes and pretty much what's being produced from the biolab, they'll actually end up getting sick and be malnourished, and they'll have to go to the medical facility and get a med kit applied to them. Another thing you can do is when you get to storage level stuff, I need to stop talking about this. We'll deal with it when we get there. I'm gonna stop talking about future stuff there. All right, so that bot really needs to weld that so we can start. Well, we don't need to produce. We still have quite a bit of stuff left over from our recycled spacecraft. Okay, so at this point we have officially achieved self-sufficiency. We have a low crew count, and we have everything we need to keep them alive, healthy, and operating. Barring any disaster, we are in good shape indeed. Anyways, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.